In this video, we are going to talk about the Memphis Exchange. The Memphis Exchange was a place in Memphis, Tennessee, where many things were bought and sold. But in order to really understand the Memphis Exchange, we have to go back and understand how Memphis became a city. And in order to understand how Memphis became a city, we have to start with Andrew Jackson. Now, Andrew Jackson is a guy that we talk a lot about in our American history class. He is involved in a lot of different things throughout the 1800s. And one of the things that he's going to be involved with in 1819 is the founding of the city of Memphis. So, in order to understand how Memphis got founded, let's take a look at the map here. So, we've got Tennessee. All right, and here's Nashville, right here in the middle. Nashville was established in 1779. That's before Tennessee became a state. Knoxville, also established before Tennessee becomes a state. Tennessee becomes a state 1796. So Tennessee gains statehood in 1796. Just a few years later, Dickson County is formed right in this area here, with Charlotte being the county seat of Dickson County. Charlotte was established 1804. The very first part of Tennessee to have people was over here to the west, in this green area that I'm shading in. That was the first part of Tennessee to have people. And then people move further and further west until they get basically here to this river, which is the Tennessee River. And then things sort of stop because this area to the west of the Tennessee River is controlled by these guys right here. And those are the Chickasaw Indians. The Chickasaw Indians, their, I guess you would say, home base or their biggest settlement was down here in this area in Mississippi. But they claimed this area between the Mississippi River over here and the Tennessee River over here. This was their area to claim. They went up here to hunt. A few maybe lived in the area, but this area was pretty much claimed by the Chickasaw Indians. And even though it was claimed by the Chickasaw Indians, it was still incorporated as part of the state of Tennessee in 1796. So we've got a situation where two groups have claim to the land. And farmers are starting to move into west, or what's going to become, I guess what is West Tennessee over here. Farmers are already moving in, and Indians are still in the area. So we've got attacks that are going on between the Indians and the American settlers, these new Tennesseans who are trying to move in to West Tennessee to start farms, and some are even trying to start plantations, because in the early 1800s the cotton gin was produced. Cotton became very profitable, and the only part of Tennessee where cotton grows well is West Tennessee. It's this area here. This is where cotton grows the best. And so Andrew Jackson decides he wants to try to keep peace between the settlers who are moving into West Tennessee and the Chickasaw Indians that still claim the area. So in 1819, Andrew Jackson goes down, meets with the Chickasaw Indians, and Jackson is able to come up with a treaty. He's going to pay the Chickasaw tribe for their land, and that's what's known as the Jackson Purchase. That takes place in the year 1819, and that is led by General Andrew Jackson. And so this is going to make way for the city of Memphis to be founded. And so the city of Memphis was founded on May 22nd, 1819. And Memphis is going to be a place where the Memphis Exchange is established and things are going to be bought and sold down here in this new city of Memphis, Tennessee. And after the city of Memphis was established in 1819, it almost immediately became a place where goods were bought and sold. And this wasn't a coincidence. Memphis was strategically placed in an important area. It's key to note here that in 1819, railroads don't exist yet. So the only way to get your goods from one place to another is to put them on a boat, which would be the most efficient. That was the most popular way to move people and to move things in the 1700s and into the early 1800s. People would put boats on bodies of water, such as rivers and streams, and that was the best way to move goods. The other way was, of course, to move things using horses, using wagons, things like that. But the river was pretty much how people moved things in the early 1800s. And so it was very important that Memphis was established near a body of water. So if you'll take a look at the map here with me, here is Memphis right here. It is right here on the Mississippi River. Okay, so this blue line here, that's the Mississippi River. And I think it's important to understand here kind of how water travels. So the Mississippi River goes from north to south. So let's take a look over here at this other map here to the right. So the Mississippi River travels south. Starts up here in the north and starts to go further south. Passes right through Tennessee, the western border of Tennessee, from north to south. It goes on down through Mississippi and into Louisiana, where it sort of ends there at New Orleans. And so if you could get your goods to Memphis, you could travel them down to New Orleans, and then from New Orleans they could travel up to the eastern coast of the United States into key cities like Philadelphia right here, New York right here, Boston right here. So Memphis became a very important place. And it also helped that Memphis was sort of downstream from other places in Tennessee. So the way that the rivers in Tennessee flow. So let's take a look here at Knoxville. Knoxville is sort of where the Tennessee River begins. Tennessee River flows this way. Okay, so follow me here. It flows actually from east to west. Flows down the corner here where Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama meet. It goes down into Alabama. It flows back to the north. And it actually goes from south up to north, connects in here with the Mississippi River, and the same thing here with the Cumberland River, which goes through Nashville. The Cumberland River flows also, starts in the east and goes west, and flows into the Mississippi River, which goes down to Memphis. Okay, and so over here in East Tennessee, it's a higher elevation. That's why you have mountains all through East Tennessee. West Tennessee is a lower elevation, and so that's how water is able to travel not only from east to west, but also from south to north. And so now that we kind of understand how the water flows, we understand why Memphis is so important, because if you have goods in Knoxville, okay, you can put those on a boat, and you can float those right down the Tennessee River all the way to the Mississippi River down to Memphis. Same thing from Nashville. And so those are the two biggest cities in Tennessee at the time, Knoxville, Nashville, and now they're going to be able to be connected downstream to Memphis. So now that we understand sort of why Memphis was established and how it became such an important place to trade things, we need to talk a little bit more about the Memphis Exchange and what was actually sold at the Memphis Exchange. So the Memphis Exchange was a place where you can buy and sell just about anything. The number one thing that was bought and sold there was cash crops, and the number one cash crop in the area was cotton. But based on the research that I've done on Memphis, seems as if maybe the second biggest cash crop was lumber. People would cut down trees. They would also move not only their cotton but also their lumber down to Memphis, and then from there, of course, it could be transported just about anywhere. So many different cash crops, and it wasn't just cotton and it wasn't just lumber, but other crops were sold in Memphis, and also slaves were sold in Memphis. Before West Tennessee began to be settled, slavery wasn't really a big part of Tennessee. Slavery was allowed in Tennessee. Slavery was legal when Tennessee was created. It was something that was allowed and tolerated throughout the state from the time that it was created in 1796. But as we get into the 1800s, after the cotton gin is created, cotton becomes very popular. It becomes very profitable. And cotton easily grows in the deep south. So we're talking about, Georgia, South Carolina, into Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. And so this area that I'm shading in orange over here, it's what we call the deep south. And cotton grows the best there. It also grows pretty well in West Tennessee. Now, it doesn't grow very good in Middle Tennessee or in East Tennessee. It doesn't really grow well in Dickson County, from what I understand. But it does grow well in West Tennessee. Cotton does grow well in some of the other states that are in the Deep South. And so cotton becomes very popular in West Tennessee. And in order to have a cotton plantation, people back then thought it was necessary to also own slaves, to have slaves work on those plantations, planting and picking and processing cotton. And so we started to see slavery become something that also slaves were bought and sold there at the Memphis Exchange. And that's something that's going to take place in Memphis for many years leading up to the Civil War.